Thank you, Jackie, and thank you to everyone for joining, and to my fellow authors as well, and to all the people from the various universities, to Penguin Random House. Thank you. It's always a pleasure, as a reader first, and second a writer, to be amongst people who value the written word and literature in general. I'm going to speak a little bit just about how the writing of this book came about, and why I chose to write Little Family. Little Family is a story about five young people, as you heard from Jack, five young people who are at the margins of society, who have decided to uh, live outside of the society they live in because it wasn't working for them the way they wanted. And so they formed a new family in the outskirts of the town that the story is situated in. And so they will leave to go out and look for food and engage with the larger world, but they will return to this sort of magical place in a way that they have created for themselves to be able to live the way they want to live. And these five young people are two young women and three young boys. And through uh, intelligence, they're able to observe society. The reason why I wanted to write this book, because I realized that for a lot of people who are at the margins of any society, perhaps have a keen observation of what uh, is good, what is bad, what can be improved in the society that they live in, more than other people who are at different apex of society. Because every day they have to be economists, they have to be traders, they have to do various things to be able to survive every day. So they are very aware of the limitations, the beauty, and all of these things that are part of society that allows it to function. Now, the writing of this book came about because I wanted to answer a question. And the question was, what is freedom, particularly for young people nowadays? The book is set in an unknown country because this applies everywhere. I had lived prior to writing the book, and while writing it, I had lived in Mauritania, I'd lived in Senegal, I'd lived in Nigeria, in Sierra Leone, and in the United States, yeah, in Los Angeles, in New York. So I observe young people and their quest for what freedom means. How can you be free where you live? How can you find your own personal definition of liberty while at the same time being part of a community, being part of a country, being part of a city? How can you unapologetically be yourself, who you are, and define what that means for you? So this is the question at the heart of the book. So these young people decided the only way they could do that was to leave society and go somewhere else and be able to do that on their own. Now, I think a lot of young people, and not just young people, I think everybody nowadays, particularly, is asking themselves these questions, particularly based on what's going on in the world. Like, who are we? What are our role in this world? How do we become each other's keepers? And once we forget that, what happens in the world? And I think these questions you see in the way these characters navigate the world they live in, how these questions are answered. Now, the other part of the book that I wanted to do was also how to use these characters to explain how we forge connections to survive the fate that we are dealt with every single day of our lives, moments of our lives. For example, now in the pandemic, everybody has their own little family that they're stuck with. It can be you and a dog, it can be you and two people that you know, whatever it is, because human beings need each other. And I think sometimes we're not aware of it because we haven't gone through any crisis, but now everybody is. So people realize that the very fact of seeing another human being deepens your humanity, brings something to you. So that's the other thing that I wanted to really get across in this book. I wanted to look at contemporary definitions for young people, particularly that may feel powerless, may feel that they don't have power, may feel that they are not, they can't contribute to society. Uh, what happens to them? But how do they regain their power again? How can they not be left behind? So all these questions you see. So the characters, the main character, even though there are five of them, the main one is a young woman, Kudimata, and who is very intelligent, but circumstances have not been fair to her in life. So she decided to find this new family. And the five of them found each other through various circumstances that happen in life, and they all decide to live in the abandoned plane, so a relic of their country's past. Now, the idea of this plane came about because I was on my way back to Sierra Leone, which is where I'm originally from. Um, and I had been thinking about this book, writing these characters. And as the plane was landing in Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone, I spotted an abandoned plane in a foliage next to the airport, around in the bushes. It had been beautifully wrapped with foliage and all the leaves, but it was still trying to stick out to see that I'm here, to say that I'm here. Look at me, I'm not forgotten in history. So I thought to myself, this would be where I start the book. This would be where the characters will inhabit, so that they're able to also be in history while dealing with the present, because history also is a very strong building block for you to understand what's going on in the present. So I use that element as well. Now, uh, because it's my country and I know a few people, I could go and explore that plane and see what it was, so that my imagination can be sparked even more to be able to do this very well. And of course, because it's my country and I know people, I could go by the airport and look at an abandoned plane and nobody would think anything of it. Um, I don't think I would have been able to do that in other places. The other thing that I wanted to do also, particularly in this book, is that I really wanted for people to understand the agency of people who are in the margins, people who are left behind, because I come from that experience as well. So when this book opens up, the characters invite you into their world on their own terms, so that they tell you what they want to tell you, how they want to tell you, not what you want to hear necessarily. So the book also pushes you to have empathy, to come with open-mindedness, which is a practice that is necessary in the world for people to approach other people without the preconceived ideas of who they are. And this way, you're actually allowed to feel their story and understand who they are. Um, so the other thing that I think is really important, particularly nowadays, that these young people try to do, is also how we ascribe intelligence to people who live in society. Oftentimes, we think maybe people who are at the top of society, economically speaking, are more intelligent than other people. So this book kind of debunked that idea and said that that is actually not true, that intelligence, creativity belongs to everyone. Now, some people may not have access to the resources to express that, but you see in the way these characters move about, how intelligent and insightful they are, actually how they think more about things than other people. Now, I come from this experience, as I mentioned earlier. So before I became a writer, how I really started to try and write um, uh, came from a very frustrating experience of people not having context about who I am in my life and where I was coming from. So because they did not, they drew conclusions that were not really favorable to meeting somebody like me or somebody who comes from that background. And I remember as a young boy, I was adopted in a family in New York City, in a Jewish family in New York City. I had just come out of the civil war in Sierra Leone. I was a child soldier in that war. And my family tried to put me in school, but nobody would take me because I did not have a report card, because I just come from war. And I remember saying to myself, well, when you're running from war, you're not really thinking of your report card. You're not thinking to yourself, oh, there's a war. Let me find my report card so that I can give it to somebody somewhere to show that I've been in school. So my first serious essay was titled Why I Do Not Have a Report Card, since everybody wanted one from me and I could not provide one, even though I spoke English, even though English is not my seventh language even. So I started to write, and I understood the power of words to give context, but to also open windows into realities that people may not be familiar with. And by doing so, for people to understand what's going on in the world, but not only that, to understand and appreciate the lives that they have. Um, so and this was very important to me because I come from a background, oral tradition background, where we believe stories are medicine that are poured into human beings to strengthen them so that they're able to face and deal with life. So this book is a medicine that I've put in the world to allow us to remember that we're each other's keepers, to allow us to understand that together we can forge connections to deal with anything that we are faced with. So I do hope that you can take a little bit of taste of this medicine and it will deepen your humanity if you allow yourself to come at it with empathy. Uh, but if you read it, it will also bring empathy out of you. So thank you again to everybody for bringing all of us together, and looking forward to hearing the other writers. Thank you.